Halo Infinite has been available for a few years now, and despite the absolute massacre it endured from the multiplayer content it offered, the story received relatively high praise from most people. A return to the original art form, more faithful music, the game primarily being set on a Halo ring and focusing on a more simplistic personal story. But despite probably being the best of the bunch from 343, it is by no means perfect, and it seems in the development hell some of the story details got overlooked in terms of whether or not they make sense, both with other pieces of Halo media and within its own story. So just before the start of Halo Infinite, there is a three-way galactic war going on. We have the UNSC, led by Lord Hood and spearheaded by Lasky and Halsey on the Infinity. You have the Banished, led by Atriox and several of his lieutenants, and you have the Created, led by Cortana and the Warden Eternal. At the end of Halo 5, Cortana has obtained an entire army's worth of Guardians, weapons that can effectively destroy an entire solar system and bring it back to the Dark Ages. As such, it's reasonable to believe that the attempts to fight the Guardian army would be a suicide mission for most of the opposition. Then, alongside Cortana, Halo Wars 2 introduces Atriox and his army, a small group of the Covenant that became disillusioned with the bullshit and chose to become space pirates. Atriox understood the folly of attempting to gain followers through fear or faith, instead either convincing them to join his army by bargaining and hiring them, or through his own principles, including humans and elites, species that the brutes had long-standing rivalries with. After these battles, his forces would scavenge and break down any weaponry and equipment they could get their hands on, whether it be Covenant, Forerunner or human. As such, they would control a vast army in Covenant-controlled space, one that did not hold the disadvantage of being blinded by belief. The UNSC at this point are on the back foot. They've had time to make some technological advancements and to start to gain a foothold back into their territory, but they've just come off 30 years of fighting the Covenant, with their forces once again strained thanks to the efforts of the Didact and Cortana. Now, Atriox's and Cortana's armies are both strong for different reasons. The Banished do have a decent amount of numbers, and they also have great tactics and are good at scavenging other resources. But the Prometheans also have a large army, and they also have the raw strength and technological advancements on their side, alongside the AI that can provide UNSC resources alongside them to bolster their strengths. So it'll be interesting to see how long it takes Cortana to completely decimate the Banished win in 2 months. I'm sorry, what? You're telling me that within 2 months, Atriox managed to take on Cortana, who was using an army that was used to fight the Flood and had machines that could police entire solar systems with ease, and not only did he manage to win, but he did it in 2 months. Hold on, let's just have a look at all the extended media related to Halo Infinite. Maybe there's something I missed. Nope, that's about it. Alright, I know he's pretty pissed. Atriox saw his world get destroyed in front of his eyes, and he's basically gone full Punisher Max on anything standing in his way of Cortana. But he genuinely doesn't have the capabilities to take her on. When I first heard about the Banished winning, destroying the UNSC forces, killing Chief and defeating Cortana's forces, I thought they were just talking about Zeta Halo, and that the war was still going on in the galaxy while the Banished managed to take control of the Halo ring. But no, somehow in 2 months, Atriox has completely destroyed both the UNSC and Cortana's forces, throwing the AI, Guardians and Prometheans in the galaxy in ruin and despair, and this is presented to us and is expected to just be a believable thing that happens, and that's it. I understand that this is supposed to be a soft reboot, tying up old loose ends and focusing on new storylines, but there's plenty of references to old characters and storylines in Infinite Story, so I don't understand why this war couldn't have been a background thing going on instead of something that just happens completely off screen, when fighting the Guardians and the Banished was the setup from the previous 2 games. Out of the 2 main forces that have a chance of winning, you chose the one that is obviously outclassed and doesn't have a chance of outright winning to be the dominant force in the galaxy in 2 months. Oh well, at least that's the only thing that doesn't make sense in the backstory. Oh wait, it's not. Atriox, and by extension his forces, are depicted as deadly, meticulous underdogs who choose their battles wisely to ensure victory and are keen to take trophies off their victories. They're like the Predator species, except they don't get defeated by logs. So why is Master Chief alive? In the intro, Atriox wastes no time beating Chief like a bongo drum, but instead of finishing his kill off, he decides to throw him into space. Why? You've seen what Red Team have done to kick your ass on the Ark. Why would you risk this? Okay, he wants revenge against Cortana. She destroyed his planet. He wants to destroy everything she cares about, including the Master Chief. so he threw him into space to slowly die to satisfy his grief. So why did you just leave him alone? I thought the Banished took trophies. Isn't the Master Chief the ultimate trophy? If so, why would you leave him out in space when you know who he is and how much a reputation his death would give you? It seems incredibly contrived. Continuing with the Banished, the Hand of Atriox is supposed to be a group of high-ranking Banished simps that Escharum trained after Atriox's apparent death. In Halo Infinite, we see they're supposed to be a real threat by the many dead Spartans that appear throughout the campaign. Now, all of the Hand that appeared in the main game also appeared in the promotional material, which I thought was a bit disappointing because not only did it spoil their appearances and weaponry, but it also spoiled that there wasn't very many of them. I thought that maybe during each mission, one or two of them would arrive and be a boss fight that Chief would have to fight through to complete his mission, but no, we killed two of them about halfway through the game, and then we kill the final two at the end of the campaign. You'd think a group called the Spartan Killers would have more than 4 members, but apparently that's all 343 made, which is a shame because there's some cool concept art of a skirmisher member and different brutes that all look unique and have some really good weapons that just don't make it into the game. Things like knuckle dusters and plasma whips. I just wish we had more members other than the ones that appeared in the promotional material. So, the final members themselves. Let's start off with the two completely wasted members, Hyperius and Tovarus. Now, we hear from the weapon about how some of these Spartans we come across were killed by brutes, implied to be these two, and how in the audio logs they were hunting the remaining UNSC forces down on Zeta Halo. So you'd think they'd be a big deal throughout the campaign, and the boss fights would be memorable. I mean, Tovarus might as well have just been a regular brute chieftain as far as I'm concerned. He just shoots you with a scrap cannon and acts like a bullet sponge. That's it. You could remove him from the game and I wouldn't notice. That's how little of an impact he had during the story. Even his design is just plain armor with no characterization. If you kill Hyperius first, he'll mention how he thought Hyperius was a coward anyways and he doesn't care that he's dead. But that's it for personality. That's all I can think of for this character. Now, Hyperius I think is even worse because he had some actual effort put into him and I still barely remember him. He has a cool variant of the chopper, but you can just hijack him off it and then he's just another jump pack brute. Absolutely nothing special about his attack patterns or movements, and he was hyped up in the concept art and the Mega Block set, which for some reason gave him a gravity hammer when he doesn't use it, because he actually gave some credibility to the concept of Spartan hunters. He has a necklace of Spartan fingers looped around his neck, and Locke's helmet and chest armor mounted on his right shoulder. They put so much time into giving him an intriguing and threatening look, and 343 just wasted it. If there's an enemy in the future that has a cool design, I don't know how people are going to stay hyped for it, because they've already demonstrated they're more than willing to just waste cool looking characters instead of developing them. So yeah, these two you could just remove from the story and replace with regular brute chieftains and nothing would be lost. Not a promising start to the Hand of Atriox, but surely the other two members will make up for it, right? Well, let's move on to Escharum, the main antagonist of the game and the head of the Hand of Atriox. And let me tell you, I'm mixed on this character. I like his design. It's a bulky yet simplistic design with little bits of intrigue like the machete swords on his chest that feel to suit him well. The biggest issue with him is he's quite an intriguing and philosophical individual in the audio logs. In the main story, he's just a bumbling idiot who wants Chief to fight him, so he's basically just gonna do what he wants on the ring. Like, at one point the Harbinger even tells him to deploy all of his forces at the Chief, but he doesn't because he wants to fight him himself and doesn't believe throwing his troops at him will stop him. Really? I know Chief is tough, but I'm sure if you got all of your ships to bombard him from orbit, or you just locked him in a room and sent in all of your legendary hunters, I doubt he's gonna be able to stop them. But he doesn't, and then Chief wins and Escharum gets his ass handed to him. He just shows up in the main story to tell Chief about the past of the Banished and to send Discord messages telling him to fight him IRL, which is really annoying to me because in the audio logs he's very introspective, questioning what he and the Banished are supposed to be doing, expressing his doubt about if the Harbinger can really help them and what Atriox saw in the Halo ring. And he seems to only be doing what he's doing in the main game because he doesn't want Atriox's sacrifice to be in vain. Yet you only get this side of him if you care about the open world to search for these audio logs, and if you don't, you never hear this. So yeah, he's the best out of the lot, but he isn't impressive and most of his substance is in the background, which annoys me because he's the main antagonist and the writer should have made sure that all of his substance was front and center. In terms of gameplay, his boss fight is a bit generic. It's just a hammer chieftain and a scrap cannon chieftain merged together, with a little bit of a gimmick that he gets a shield every now and then once you remove his health. That's it. His fight is the best based purely on the fact that it at least brings something new to the gameplay instead of just a repeat of a regular boss that you can fight in the open world with extra health. And we then have our final member, who I find the most disappointing and least likeable. So Jega Rdomnai, who I'm going to call the Blade Master from now on because it's less annoying to say, was one of the most hyped up enemies in the marketing, which is how I knew he was going to be bad. In all the trailers, the only thing we saw of him is the boss fight cutscene, and we didn't see anything else involving him. When a piece of media shows the same piece of them over and over again and doesn't show them in other places, that generally means the character isn't as apparent in the story as you think they are. And yeah, for someone who's so hyped, he only appears for about 5 minutes and then he's just gone. In terms of appearance, I like the idea of elites having cybernetics to make them stronger, and I like the idea of the energy blade being in his left arm. Everything else about his appearance just kind of annoys me. I don't know why people keep thinking that making a character have the colours black and red and having a silly edgy voice makes them cool. This isn't the mid-2000s anymore. Making a character that's the equivalent of Shadow the Hedgehog just isn't cool. We get a glimpse of personality in his interactions with Escharum, but that's mostly just him listening to Escharum talking and then deciding to wait on the pilot ship until he's conveniently in front of the chief and hundreds of feet in the air before capturing him. And the thing that annoyed me the most is that he was described as being the opposite of the Arbiter, and when you compare one character to another, you're placing them on pretty equal levels of importance. So when you say he's like the darkest part of the Arbiter, and the most we see of him is one boss fight and a few cutscenes, that's only going to breed disappointment. In terms of gameplay, again, his boss fight is just reused from a previous segment, being the track lock fight, but with a really annoying bullshit ability for him to just completely disappear from the map even with the motion sensors. So not only is his boss battle the same as a previous one, but the only way they can make it different is to just remove him from the game so you can't hurt him. That's not a test of skill, that's just random bullshit. Moving on from the Banished, let's take a look at another major aspect of the story. The game treats the narrative around Cortana kinda like a murder mystery, with Chief and the Weapon attempting to discover how Cortana died and why a large portion of the ring was destroyed. And during the game, we discover exactly what transpired in this section of the ring, from what Cortana was researching during the Created War, to when the Banished arrived, all the way up to when she destroyed the portion of the ring she was being held in, killing herself and seemingly taking Atriox with her. And in those final seconds, she leaves a message for Chief, stating about how she made some mistakes, especially in not trusting Chief more, and the reveal she was responsible for saving the weapon from deletion, and how hopefully they can look at her mistakes and not let the weapon go down the same path, making the message seem like all is forgiven as she has given the weapon a new chance in life and that her and Chief would be able to sort things out in the end. My main issue with this narrative in Infinite is that it makes Cortana's death seem like some sort of redemptive arc, as if her actions in stopping the Banished make up for anything she's done and gives her a satisfying send-off, when several moments in both Halo 5 and Infinite seem to be pushing the idea that everything she has done is beyond redeemable. And combine that with the fact she sacrifices herself not out of redemption but because she was beaten and didn't want to be the only one to go down, it just doesn't work. First off, she raised the Guardians from their slumber without giving any forewarning to the individuals who are occupying the planet she's doing this on. Now, the act of the Guardians rising themselves gives off an incredibly large amount of seismic activity, sort of like a massive earthquake, which would have already caused damage to any populated areas nearby when they rose up. But as Cortana then chooses to have them slip space jump immediately from where they rise from, without going out of the atmosphere, the EMP burst given off by the Guardians, as well as the blasts produced when they actually enter slip space, would wipe out the power to essential systems that might be needed to survive. They can also destroy space elevators used for resources and transport, which would leave people stranded on the surface. And they would just severely damage structures and aircraft in general, making it difficult to seek shelter and to run away from these effects. Lasky even describes in Halo 5 that the damage produced by them is catastrophic, so we can insinuate that one of these disasters could kill thousands of people, but considering that it's stated that she raised Guardians on at least 12 other recorded human settlements, the body count could even be in the hundreds of thousands, maybe even a million depending on how populated they are. Moving on from that, it's made abundantly clear she's going to rule her own way, and that anyone who steps out of line is going to be destroyed, with the Earth getting EMP'd at the end of Halo 5, which most likely killed a lot of people. There would be people stranded in space, hospitals losing power, the shockwave from the burst itself might have destroyed people's shelter and killed them, and she does this from the get-go just to establish dominance. Now, while it could be argued that this isn't strictly her fault and that the UNSC AI that joined her at the end of Halo 5 do so out their own initiative, I would say that she's essentially emotionally and psychologically abusing the hundreds of smart AIs in the galaxy. As discussed in the breaking level of Halo 5, Chief notices that Cortana is attempting to use psychological tactics in order to get in at the heads of other individuals and gain allies to her cause.
Psychological tactics. Saying my name. Playing nice.
One of the deepest fears for smart AIs is that they know they only have around 7 years of life before they get decommissioned or go crazy and think themselves to death. Cortana's story in Halo 4 shows exactly how terrifying this thought is to them. So I would say that when you're telling all the smart AIs in the galaxy, if you want to live without the fear of rampancy destroying yourself and the things and people you love, you will swear full allegiance to me and do whatever I say when I say it, I would argue she is essentially blackmailing them to be on her side through emotional manipulation, which, while not the worst of her actions, is still a pretty heinous crime. During Infinite, it's revealed that during the negotiations with Lord Hood, she decided to essentially nuke Sydney. Now, on the one hand, I get it. I've seen how fucking horrible the spider problem in Australia is, but unfortunately, in nuking Sydney, she killed millions of people and destroyed the headquarters of the UNSC. On top of this, she also ordered the UNSC AI Leonidas to destroy a Spartan 4 training station and himself to remove some Spartans that refused to follow her, which not only seems like overkill and a waste of resources, just reinforces how callous she's become. Say what you will about the people who might have died in Halo 5, at least you could argue that those casualties were just a unfortunate consequence of giving her an army that would pacify the galaxy, and that it was just a few people who had to die so the greater majority of the forces that oppose her would know they couldn't win and would essentially surrender. This here is just what a full-on villain does, destroying an entire settlement because a few people oppose her, and thoughtlessly throwing away one of their own troops just because they can't be bothered to come up with a greater solution. She's just irredeemable at this point. And then we get what she does next. She decides, due to the defiance of one brute, Atriox, that she would blow up his home planet of Doisak. As I've stated, this isn't what I think makes her irredeemable, but it is just another action to demonstrate that she is beyond redemption. And when Atriox storms Zeta Halo and takes control of the ring after she's locked down, as she no longer has Doisak as a bargaining chip to make Atriox back off, she's essentially stuck on the ring and unable to do anything from her position. She then decides to eliminate the weapons deletion protocol so she can help Chief in the UNSC, and then blows up a portion of the ring she's in, destroying her data and seemingly killing Atriox. Now, the story treats this as a noble sacrifice, some sort of heroic gesture to make up for her past misdeeds. She realizes all the horrible things she's done and what has happened, and decides to try and make things right by killing herself, Atriox, and removing a powerful weapon from the control of the Banished. However, this isn't how it came off to me. If, in the story, the destruction of Doisak was the only time we saw her be cruel, an act of weakness when giving in to her emotions, and later learning that the UNSC had been defeated above Zeta Halo and choosing to immediately sacrifice herself, then I could possibly see a redemption arc for her, with her death being used to try and atone for a singular moment of weakness that had consequences that she couldn't predict. However, this isn't the case, as listed with the reasons from before, and she had shown herself to be cruel far beyond dealing with the Banished. If anything, her decision to blow herself up seems less like a moment of redemption, and more the case to just try and take Atriox down with her. By this point, her forces can't help her, she's been locked in a specific part of the ring by the weapon, meaning she can't escape anywhere. She's just learned that humanity in the UNSC is in shambles and can't really do anything to help with her situation, and that the Master Chief is stranded in space, and that even if he's still alive, the chances of him being able to help her is severely implausible. And the fact that Atriox wants to use the weapons on the Halo, as well as the Halo itself, to bring ruin to the galaxy, this would make all of the work she has put in to try and dominate and peacekeep the galaxy worthless. So her decision to blow up the ring is less that she's choosing to sacrifice herself, her empire and her goals for the greater good, and more of a case that her only two options is either being a slave and watching her work get destroyed, or she can kill herself, ridding herself from a prison she's being kept in, and kill Atriox, robbing the Banished from their main leading figure. That doesn't really sound very redemptive to me. In fact, it sounds pretty fucking petty. So yeah, I just feel like they didn't get the correct balance between making Cortana's actions harsh but necessary and just being outright cruel. And because of this, I feel like this caused her sacrifice to feel less like a moment of redemption and more like a final moment of spite against Atriox, which makes her final goodbye to Chief come across as just severely hollow. Overall, Halo Infinite's story is extremely lackluster. Large portions of the previous world building is just thrown away and forgotten about. Certain details that you need to help make the stuff that happens in the campaign a bit more memorable is just left in the books. Some of the biggest things that were hyped up for the story are just massive letdowns. And the thing that annoyed me the most probably was the fact that this was clearly a part 1, ending on a cliffhanger that was obviously designed to continue into DLC, but now it's going to take until the next game comes out until we see what happens. However, seeing as how the newly revamped Halo studio seems to be suffering from the same problems that 343 did, my hype for the next Halo project is severely downhill. Thanks for watching, lads and lasses. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, subscribing and checking out some of my other videos. Sharing always helps, and if you're feeling really generous, please consider my Patreon or YouTube membership. But most of all, I just hope you had a great day, and hopefully I will see you in the next video.